This is TrendKiLL. Unfortunately, TrendKiLL is under the weather, therefore he cannot be his normal animated self in this intro. Luckily, most of the audio was recorded before he started feeling sick. Great timing, TrendKiLL. Welcome to Know Your Enemy. If you're new to the series, click here for episode 1, where TrendKiLL explains what these videos are all about. If you're new to the game, click here for TrendKiLL's beginner's guides. These videos will help you get caught up with some of the terminology used in this series. Without further ado, let's take a look at Anhur, the Egyptian slayer of enemies.
Alright, so we start things off with a visual representation of what the god is good at in graph form, and this is going to be a fairly standard looking graph for most hunters. You're going to see control, mobility, and utility kind of fluctuate on hunters. They're all going to have next to no healing, low defense, and high damage. That's just the nature of the role. Now, Anhur's second highest stat would be control. He's got a lot of control in his kit with slows and knockups, knockbacks, stuns, but his utility is really low because he's only going to be played in really one role, and his abilities aren't that complex. The complexity of Anhur comes in how you use his abilities together. And speaking of his abilities, segue. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the more intricate details of his kit. This is going to be a fairly short section because, again, Anhur's kit is very simple. His passive Enfeeble reduces the physical protection of every enemy he hits with his basic attacks by 15 for 3 seconds. So Anhur comes out of the gate with penetration, which is a pretty big deal early on. His first ability, Shifting Sands, quite obviously has a slow on it. If you walk through the sands, you'll absolutely notice that you are being slowed. What you may not know about this ability is that it also gives Anhur a damage buff on his basic attacks to any target who is standing in the sand. That includes gods, that includes minions, that includes objectives like Fire Giant and Gold Fury. So always understand that if you're standing in his Shifting Sands, you will take anywhere between 4 and 20% more damage from his auto attacks. So late game, this is absolutely devastating. His second ability, Impale, is a one-of-a-kind ability. This is the only ability that knocks back an enemy, and if it knocks that enemy back into a wall, it stuns them on impact. It's kind of an interesting mechanic. It's basically the equivalent of him pinning you to the wall with his spear. The second thing you need to recognize about this ability is that while Impale goes through minions, it does not go through gods. So as soon as Anhur's Impale hits a god, it will knock them back and stop traveling. Early game, this can actually be used to your benefit, and we'll talk about that in the tips section. And his third and fourth abilities, Disperse and Desert Fury, are very straightforward, so assuming you've read the abilities, there's nothing really super special about them. Okay, now before we get into the mechanics section, I have a very quick story to tell you. During the inception of this series, or during the storyboarding phase of this series, I was trying to figure out how I wanted it to flow, and I was thinking about all of the gods that I used to be bad at and now I'm pretty good at, and I was thinking about that moment where it all clicked and that eye-opening experience, and the number one god on that list of, oh my gosh, that's how you play him, was Anhur. If you know me and you watched me stream, at one point I thought I was the worst Anhur in the world. I couldn't figure out his kit, none of his abilities seemed to work together, so I sat down, I watched some pro players play him, I was like, I'm gonna figure this god out. And when I saw some of the stuff they were doing, it all clicked, and it was the most eye-opening experience I've had in SMITE yet. So I was super excited that he was in free god rotation, that he could be the first god that I could do outside of the 5 free gods. Hopefully this guide helps you have the same eye-opening experience that I had originally, and let's get into the mechanics. Alright, so for the first ability, Shifting Sands, I've got one major tip that's going to be broken down into 2 smaller tips. First off, understand that Shifting Sands is a large area of effect slow that lasts for 7 seconds. But in the center of that slow is an obelisk or a pillar that works exactly like any other player deployed wall. So what that means is it's exactly like Ymir's wall, except a much smaller version. Now understand, because it is exactly like Ymir's wall, it does everything that Ymir's wall does on a smaller scale because it's a smaller wall. So it will still obstruct vision, it will still block auto attacks and abilities that don't go through walls, and even though it's smaller, it still has the capabilities of trapping you against a wall. Heck, even if you're running from an Anhur in the lane, he has the ability to throw that in front of you, allow you to run face first right into the wall, and then be stuck in the middle of a slow. It's not likely you're going to get out of that. And as far as the second part of the tip is concerned, because it is deployed exactly like Ymir's wall, Anhur can also, as long as he's got rank 2 in boots, cast his ability at his feet and run through the pillar before it actually spawns, leaving you stuck in the slow behind it. So even though it doesn't have the size and the shape and the blocking potential of Ymir's wall, it's still probably going to help him get away from you. Now moving on to Impale, his second ability, his bread and butter, by far his most important ability, and the one ability that is involved in pretty much every advanced mechanic that Anhur's kit offers. So first off, remember that Impale knocks you back, and if it knocks you back into a wall, it sticks you to that wall for 1.5 seconds at max rank. So for my first tip, do not stand close to walls where Anhur can get an angle on you where he can pin you to that wall. A 1 second to 1.5 second stun can be devastating, especially against an ADC. Now, Impale is a very versatile ability. It helps set up other abilities, and other abilities help set it up. So first off, let's talk about the abilities that are used to set up an Impale stun. An imperative part of Anhur's kit is using Shifting Sands in combo with Impale. If you're playing a good Anhur, you will see him throw up an obelisk or a pillar behind you and try to stun you to it with Impale. That is an imperative part of his kit. Now, for those of you who are using this video to your advantage because you want to use these tips to play Anhur, this is a very hard thing to get used to and a very hard thing to set up. Once you figure it all out, you've got your timing, your speed, and your positioning all set up, it becomes almost second nature, but starting out, it is an impossibility to hit these, and when you hit one, you're gonna be like, yeah, I did it. Now, another thing you're gonna have to watch out for is Anhur setting up an Impale stun with Disperse. Now, Disperse is his jump, but from where he lands, there is an AoE around him that creates a knockback effect. And if he knocks you back towards a wall, it makes it very easy to telegraph where you're gonna land so that he can stick you to that wall. Now, this is gonna be kind of a rapid fire tip section because there's a lot of tips involved in this combo that I wanna make sure you look out for. First off, he has the opportunity to, once he's stuck you to a wall, throw a pillar up in the direction that you're gonna have to run. Now, not only do you have to run around that pillar, you have to run around that pillar through a slow, all the while he's auto-attacking you. So if you overextend and you're found vulnerable, he can jump on you with his Disperse, stick you to a wall, throw an obelisk up north of you, and then he can use Desert Fury, his ultimate, to start pegging you with damage, and you can't do anything about it. Your only hope in that scenario is that you're playing a god that has a jump. Even a dash is hard to get out of that scenario because the obelisk is blocking the path that you want to dash. Now, the good news to all of that is if Anhur misses his jump and lands in an area where he doesn't have a good angle to pin you to a wall, he doesn't have any more escape because he's used it to be aggressive. At that point, you can start to punish that decision. Now, understand that he's still got Shifting Sands as a slow, Impale as a knockback, and Desert Fury for CC immunity and damage, but you can still stay on top of him with damage. And let's talk about one more thing with Impale. Remember, I said earlier that it will go through minions, but will not go through gods. Well, fortunately for you, if you're playing against an Anhur, you or your Guardian can stand in front of your minions, and he cannot use his Impale to clear them, because it's going to hit you first, knock you back through the minions, but the Impale stops when it hits you. So if played right, he's going to have to use his auto attacks to kill your minions, while you're free to use your abilities. Alright, so let's talk about Desert Fury, his ultimate. This is probably one of the scariest level 5 ultimates in the game, meaning that it does an insane amount of damage early on. Now, as you get towards the later game, it starts to fall off because your auto attacks end up doing more damage, but in the early to mid game, this ability can be absolutely terrifying. Think of it this way, if Anhur beats you to level 5 and you're still level 4, you're probably going to have somewhere between 700 and 750 life, depending on the items that you bought. Desert Fury at rank 1 deals 60 damage per spear for 8 spears, plus 15% of your physical power, which at this point is going to be negligible, so you can estimate about 480 to 500 damage, and that's not counting any setup. At level 5, his Impale will be probably rank 2, meaning it's going to do 150 of its own damage, plus the ultimate, you're talking 650 damage in just 2 abilities. So even if you're at 100% health, you still have to be careful around an Anhur who's got his full kit available that early. Another thing about Desert Fury is that it's a very deceptive ability for 2 main reasons. The first one being it's much longer than Anhur's auto attack, so just when you think you're at a safe distance, he pops Desert Fury and ends up burning you down. Another thing is that Desert Fury can be shot through walls, so you turn the corner thinking that you're safe around the wall, and he ends up using Desert Fury through the trees of the jungle. And again, this is all ignoring the fact that he's still got a slow from his Shifting Sands and a jump to catch up to you with Disperse. Very early on in the game, Anhur can be pretty scary. And last but not least, Anhur's Desert Fury gives him CC immunity for the duration of the ability. Now this means 3 things. First off, if Anhur is in the middle of Desert Fury, you cannot apply any form of CC to him. You can't can't stun him, you can't silence him, you can't root him, nothing will work, so don't waste those abilities. 2, if he happens to get stunned before Desert Fury goes off, he has to wait until that stun duration wears off before he can cast Desert Fury. He cannot cast out of it as if it were purification beads. However, and this is the third scenario, if you happen to have Anhur's soft CC'd, like crippled or rooted, he can use Desert Fury to cleanse those soft CCs. So this ability will cleanse things like slows, cripples, and roots. So just remember, if you're somebody like Emir or Hades who's going to try to take advantage of the fact that Anhur's jump is down, he can use Desert Fury to get out of your ultimate.
This concludes episode 6 of Know Your Enemy. Come back next week when TrendKiLL will be discussing Scylla, the horror of the deep. Nope, that sounded bad. The horror of the deep.